The story begins in the quiet, sunlit town of Cebu in the Philippines, where 8-year-old Mia lives with her family. Despite her young age, Mia carries an energy and determination that sets her apart from other children. She has always been fascinated by music, drawn particularly to the violin, an instrument she picked up when she was just 5. Her grandmother, who passed away before Mia could remember clearly, had been a talented pianist and often sang lullabies to the family. Mia's parents would tell her stories of how her grandfather, Mang Tonio, used to hum along with her grandmother's music, filling the house with warmth and laughter. Music, the family believed, was what connected the generations. Mia's life, however, has been marked by a profound sadness. Her grandfather has been in a coma for 30 years, ever since a terrible accident left him unresponsive. For the family, Mang Tonio's absence was a heavy shadow, one that they had grown accustomed to over the decades. Mia only had fragmented memories of him from her earliest years, but she felt an unexplainable bond, as though his presence lingered in her heart. She often asked her parents about him, and they shared stories of his gentle nature, his love for music, and the joy he had brought to their lives. These stories fueled Mia's fascination with the man she had never truly known. One afternoon, as the golden sunlight poured into the house, Mia felt a sudden, strong urge to visit her grandfather. Carrying her small violin, she approached the hospital bed where he lay, still and silent as he had been for decades. Her parents hesitated, unsure if it would make any difference, but Mia's mother could see the determination in her daughter's eyes and finally nodded. With a deep breath, Mia positioned the violin under her chin, her tiny fingers poised on the strings. The first note sounded soft, tentative, yet remarkably clear. She began to play a simple lullaby that her mother had taught her, one that her grandfather had loved years ago. The music floated through the room, filling the space with a warmth that felt almost magical. Mia closed her eyes as she played, focusing entirely on her grandfather. For the first time in 30 years, the room seemed to hold a quiet, almost sacred energy. Her mother, watching from the doorway, felt tears welling in her eyes. She whispered softly, "He always loved that one." Though Mang Tonio's eyes remained closed, his hand twitched ever so slightly, a subtle but powerful sign that the music had reached him. That day, Mia left the room feeling a mixture of hope and awe, believing that somehow her music could bridge the decades of silence. Over the following days, the story of Mia's visits spread quietly through the family and their close neighbors. Her father encouraged her to continue, sensing that her gift might awaken something long dormant. Mia practiced diligently, her small hands mastering more complex pieces with each passing day. She experimented with different songs, from traditional Filipino folk music to classical pieces, always searching for the one that might stir her grandfather's soul. With every note, she poured all her love and hope into the music, believing that it could reach him in a way words never could. The local community began to take notice. Neighbors would peek into the room quietly, watching the small girl perform, moved by the extraordinary devotion of someone so young. Even doctors who had long given up hope found themselves amazed by the subtle signs of reaction in Mang Tonio. While the changes were small, a twitch of a finger, a slight movement of an eyelid, each one brought renewed determination to Mia and her family. Social media, shared by relatives, started to document the story, capturing hearts far beyond Cebu. People from across the Philippines, and eventually around the world, marveled at the courage and love of a little girl who refused to accept that her grandfather's silence was permanent. Mia's story began to reach further than her small town. Local news crews came to cover the girl who played the violin for her grandfather, a man who had been in a coma for 30 years. People were captivated by the images of this tiny, determined girl, her bow gliding across the strings, her face etched with concentration and love. Though she was only 8, Mia carried herself with a grace and focus that belied her age. Every day, she arrived at her grandfather's room with a new song, each carefully chosen to touch his heart. Among the pieces she played were hauntingly beautiful classical compositions, soothing folk songs from her culture, and the lullabies that had been passed down in her family for generations. One rainy afternoon, as water tapped softly against the windows, Mia felt drawn to play something new. She had discovered an old recording of her grandfather humming a classical piece called Clair de Lune, a song her grandmother had played decades ago. Positioning the violin under her chin, she allowed the notes to flow, delicate and emotional. The sound filled the room, vibrating gently against the walls and the hearts of those present. For the first time, a visible reaction occurred. Mantonio's fingers twitched slightly, and his eyelids flickered in a way that startled the family. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The doctors, called in immediately, checked his vitals and brain activity, confirming something incredible. His body was responding. Mia, oblivious to the medical significance, continued to play, lost in the connection she felt with her grandfather. Every note she produced was an offering of love, hope, and patience. Though the world outside could hardly understand it, those in the room could feel the power of her determination. Even neighbors and distant relatives who had come to watch were reduced to quiet tears, witnessing the miracle unfold before them. The music seemed to transcend time and silence, creating a bridge between generations separated by decades. As days turned into weeks, Mia's visits became almost ritualistic. She learned her grandfather's favorite songs through old recordings and stories from her mother, recreating the melodies with precision. Each performance brought subtle progress. Sometimes he would move his hand slightly, other times a tear would glisten at the corner of his eye. These small gestures, though minute to an outsider, were monumental victories for the family. They saw in them the spark of life that had long been dormant, and hope began to replace the despair that had hung over the household for 30 years. The neighborhood rallied around them. Neighbors would quietly gather outside the room, bringing flowers or simply watching from the doorway. They shared stories of Mantonio, recounting his kindness, humor, and generosity. These narratives helped Mia feel a connection to a man she had never truly known, deepening her resolve to reach him through music. Meanwhile, the story began to spread on social media, with relatives posting videos of Mia playing. Comments poured in from across the globe, many expressing disbelief, others marveling at the power of love and the innocence of a child willing to dedicate herself to such a mission. Though the attention was overwhelming at times, Mia remained focused. Her tiny hands moved over the strings with determination, her bow gliding gracefully, each note infused with hope. Doctors who had long stopped expecting miracles were compelled to watch, acknowledging that there was something extraordinary happening, something beyond medical explanation. The world seemed to slow down when Mia played, everyone holding their breath, silently willing Mantonio to respond. Through the dedication of this young girl, the house in Cebu began to fill again with life. Each day of music, each subtle sign of reaction, strengthened the family's belief that something miraculous was possible. In the quiet moments between songs, they would exchange glances filled with hope and love, united in the belief that the music might awaken what had been silent for 3 decades. Mia had become more than a granddaughter. She was a beacon of hope, a symbol of unwavering love that could bridge even the longest stretches of time and silence. One morning, as sunlight streamed softly through the windows, Mia arrived at her grandfather's room with her violin, feeling a mixture of excitement and quiet determination. She had chosen the lullaby she had begun with years ago, the very first song she had ever played for him. There was a serene energy in the room, a sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. As Mia drew her bow across the strings, the notes filled the air with gentle warmth. Her focus was absolute, and her heart poured into every sound she produced. Her mother stood nearby, holding her breath, while her father leaned in close, silently praying that this would be the day their long wait might finally end. As the final notes echoed softly in the room, something remarkable occurred. Mang Tonio's eyelids twitched, then slowly opened, revealing eyes that had not seen the world for 30 long years. The family gasped in disbelief, frozen for a moment in a mixture of awe, shock, and overwhelming joy. The doctors rushed in, checking his vital signs and ensuring that what they were witnessing was real. Mang Tonio's eyes, once dulled by decades of silence, now shimmered with life and recognition. He tried to speak, his voice weak but unmistakable. "Mia," he whispered, his tone trembling with emotion. The tiny girl, still holding her violin, froze for a heartbeat and then, with tears streaming down her cheeks, continued to play, filling the room with music as she ran into her grandfather's arms. The family embraced, a mixture of tears, laughter, and quiet sobs filling the room. 30 years of absence, of silent prayers and unwavering hope, had culminated in this miraculous reunion. Mang Tonio's fingers, once so still, now grasped Mia's hand with strength and warmth. Every person in the room could feel the weight of decades lifting, replaced by a joy too profound for words. News outlets immediately captured the emotional moment, sharing the story with viewers across the Philippines and eventually the world. The little girl who had refused to give up on her grandfather became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary power of love expressed through music. Mia's life changed in subtle but meaningful ways after that day. While she remained humble and unassuming, her story inspired countless people who saw in her dedication the potential for miracles in everyday life. Schools invited her to perform, local media documented her journey, and social media posts of the reunion went viral, touching hearts in every corner of the globe. Yet for Mia, none of the attention mattered as much as the simple, profound connection she had forged with her grandfather. The following weeks and months were filled with gradual recovery. Mang Tonio, once confined to a hospital bed, began to regain mobility and speech, slowly reclaiming the life that had been stolen from him decades ago. Music continued to play a central role in his healing. Mia would sit beside him daily, violin in hand, as they shared new melodies and old family favorites. Their bond, strengthened by music and unwavering love, became a daily source of joy for the entire household. The house that had been quiet for 30 years was now filled with laughter, music, and conversation, a living testament to the power of patience, devotion, and hope. The story of Mia and her grandfather inspired people far beyond Cebu. Families, musicians, and caregivers around the world shared the tale, marveling at how a child's courage and heart could transform a life long thought lost. For Mia, the experience taught her that even the smallest acts of love can create profound change. Through her violin, she had not only awakened her grandfather, but had reminded the world that miracles can occur when hope is nurtured with patience and care. Life, once frozen by silence, had returned, vibrant and full of music, laughter, and love, proving that the bonds of family and the language of music can overcome even the greatest challenges.